Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. It's an age-old headache, right? We need to send money to our vendor up front for product we're purchasing. Uh, but how do we let AP know? And how do we know if AP took care of paying it for us? Did we lose track of deposits made? How many hours have we spent trying to determine how much we've already paid to the vendor when we do finally get our product? Or worse, we realize that we had paid a deposit and then paid for the order in full after we received it. Today, we're going to take a look at the tools that are built into S2K that are going to help you keep track of all of those deposits internally, as well as allow you to communicate between purchasing and accounts payable. And we're always going to be able to keep track of those deposits. So in order to use PO deposits, there is a little bit of required setup. We have to go to do some setup in our general ledger chart of accounts. We also have a little bit of work to do in the cross applications on the general ledger tab in the company setup. And then finally, we have to look at our vendor master files as well. So to start with, when you are getting ready to start using PO deposits, you do need to create a GL account that's going to be used for deposits on inventory. It is going to be an asset account. So once we have that asset account built, we're ready to go ahead and move on to the cross applications, and we're going to go into the company setup and onto the general ledger tab, and we're going to arrow down until we are just above the purchasing module. You're going to see a deposits account title. This is going to tell the system where to book those deposits to as we are doing deposit transactions. Once we have that set up, we're ready to go ahead and take a look at our master vendor files. So for every vendor that we're going to need to make prepayments to, we're going to go into the vendor master file. And again, you can get to those either through the accounts payable module or the purchasing module under the file maintenance. You're going to go ahead and check this little checkbox here that says allow PO deposits. What this does for us is it actually is going to activate a button on the PO entry screen on the summary of the PO itself. If we don't have this box checked in the vendor master file, that button doesn't appear in the purchase order. So you do need to make sure if we're going to pay them a deposit, we need to have allow PO deposits checked in their vendor master file. So once you take care of those few pieces of setup, how do we actually go about adding a deposit to a purchase order? So you're going to go through all of your normal steps for a purchase order. We're going to go into daily transaction processing, and we're going to go into purchase orders. We're going to start a new purchase order. So I have selected a vendor that I know I have checked the box for in their vendor file master that says allow PO deposits. I set up the PO exactly as I would for any other order. I go ahead and add all of my items to my PO, and then I hit end order. And because we have allow PO deposits checked, there is now a deposits button available for us to use in our purchase order. So we go ahead and click on that deposits button, and it brings up a deposits window. Now you can tell the system how much you want to pay this vendor up front in two different ways. You can say you want to pay a total percentage of the PO, or you can enter a specific amount. So in our example, we're paying 50% of the total due, and the system has calculated that out to $7,825.06. Or we could have said that we wanted to pay just a straight amount. Maybe we want to pay $2,000 in advance. Maybe we want to pay $5,000 in advance. We could key in the exact amount we want to pay if we choose. Once we have that information entered, we're going to hit our forward button. And the system is going to ask us, are we sure we need this deposit? So we're going to hit that confirm button that we see. And it records that we have a request for deposit. So this is still the deposit screen that comes up when we hit our deposits button. We can see the date and time we entered our deposit request, and we can see that nothing else has been done with it at this point. But as we move along, we're going to be coming back and checking the screen. Once we have that initial deposit request entered on the purchase order, the ball is now in accounts payables court. So we are able to, in accounts payable, take a look at what we need to pay deposits wise by going into the daily transaction processing. We're going to go into the vouchers folder, and in there, there's a folder called PO deposits. And we're going to take the list create purchase order deposits option. That brings us into a screen where we are able to see all of the deposits that are currently waiting to be processed. We're only seeing one vendor in here, but this would show you every vendor if there was more than one waiting for a deposit. You have the ability to sort through. So if you have several deposits entered and you're looking for one specific deposit, you can enter a PO number to file out everything else. If we only want to pay a specific vendor, we could do that too. Down in the information section of this page, we could see the vendors, the vendor name, the different POs, the amount of the PO in total, and the amount that we need to have paid as a deposit. And we can also see who was the user that created this PO and when they created it. To process one of these for payment, we're going to hit the drop-down box and choose select. We're going to go ahead and hit the end batch button, and it's going to take us to a summary screen. I only have one PO selected that I want to process the deposit for, but if we had selected more than one, we would see all of those. Just like everywhere else in S2K, we do have to post our batch in order for this information to go anywhere. So we're going to go ahead and click on that post batch button. It's going to ask us where we want our report to print. We're going to go ahead and leave that as is and hit the forward button. And that has posted our payment request into accounts payable. So we are now looking at the vendor inquiry page for our vendor. In S2K, when you're looking at the inquiry, we do have different types of postings. We have invoices, we have credit memos. Deposits are their own special type. So you are very quickly able to see all of your deposits for a vendor by changing your selection to deposits. We can see that we have 4 deposits that we currently owe to this vendor, and we haven't paid anything, so we have all of those due. We're going to go ahead and go through our normal payment process. We're going to select it to be paid. It now functions just like any other voucher. We can have it be pulled through the auto payment selection, or we can go through manual payment selection, and we're going to go ahead and issue that check to the vendor. Once that's done, we do have visibility throughout the system that we can see where we're at with those. So if we're in accounts payable, we can run an accounts payable aged open report. There is the option for the report format to be only unpaid deposits. So you're going to change that report format to unpaid deposits. You're going to put in your date and period information. And it's going to bring up an aging and show you everything that is currently on your open aging report that is a type of deposit. This is the one that we have just entered and that we have been following through. We could see that that is still out there to be paid. On the buyer side of the house, we can also see where we're at with this. We can go back into our purchase order. We can hit that deposit button, and we're going to see that at this point, we have now had a voucher created. We could see who in accounts payable took care of that for us and what the voucher number associated with it is. But there isn't a payment yet. That allows us to follow up with them and say, hey, are you going to pay that anytime soon? Anything we need to do along those lines. And once they've issued that payment, if we were to come back in here, we would see that payment information as well. So if your vendor has called you up and said, hey, I know we got this order for you. We're waiting to start production. We haven't received your deposit yet. You're able to just click on this button and say, oh, well, you know what? We did issue you that payment. Here's the payment number. And if we were to slide over, we would also be able to see a payment date. So you have all the information that you need at your fingertips, whether you're in accounts payable or purchasing to follow your deposits. So we have paid our deposit to the vendor. They have gone ahead and produced our order for us. The order is now at the warehouse door, and we are receiving that product into the warehouse. So the next thing that is going to happen is that receipt's going to go to our accounts payable department, and they're going to do a pricing verification. So in pricing verification, that is where the final step happens for our deposit. We're going to apply a deposit to that pricing verification voucher. So we're going to go ahead and go into daily transactions. We're going to choose pricing verification, and we're going to do the enter update invoices. You're going to do the regular entry of an invoice number. We're going to put in the purchase order number that we are tying to this voucher. We're going to move forward into the verification, and we're going to go ahead and add our date. We're going to add our invoice amount. We're going to check all of our invoice quantities, our invoice costs, make sure everything is in line, just like we always would. We'll hit that end invoice. We still have the opportunity to add any additional freight charges, any discounts, any miscellaneous charges. And this is where the process changes. If we have paid a deposit on this PO that we're currently working on a pricing verification for, when we hit the forward button here, we're going to get a new box. And this box is notifying us that there is a deposit. It's telling us how much that deposit amount was for. And it's asking us, do we want to use that and apply that against the total due on this particular pricing verification voucher? In most cases, you're probably always going to click on that box and say, yes, I want to use it. But maybe there's a special circumstance and you don't want to use it this time around. You're getting a second invoice down the road and that's where you want to use it. That's fine. You can uncheck that box and it's not going to do anything with that deposit out there. But we are going to take our deposit today. We're only getting one invoice. We want to make sure we apply that deposit. So we check our box and we hit the forward button. You also have a choice when you get to the PO deposit screen of whether you want to use the entire amount on this invoice or do you want to put a portion towards this invoice. So again, if we know we're getting two invoices and we have worked it out with our vendor that we're going to apply half of the deposit to the first invoice and half of the deposit to the second invoice, we can do that by changing the amount in the deposit to use field. But again, in most cases, you're probably going to take it all at once. So we're going to put a check mark in that select all box, and we're going to hit the forward arrow button. This takes us to our summary screen. This is the normal summary screen that we see. We can see the total amount of merchandise that we're going to be booking with this voucher. We can see that there were no other additional charges. So the total invoice cost is $15,650.11. And we're also seeing the amount of deposit that we added. So we are going to have a total invoice amount of $15,650.11 posted to accounts payable. It's immediately going to be showing that we've already paid $7,825.06 of that invoice. And it's going to have a remaining balance open of $7,825.05. So once we post that, we can go ahead and go into our voucher vendor inquiry. And here is our voucher that we just posted. We see our original amount of invoice. We can see the deposit amount that was already paid. And the open balance that we have left to pay is $7,825.05. There is a few deposit maintenance options that you do have available to you to keep all of this clean and in order. In our accounts payable module in the reports folder, we have an unpaid PO deposits report that you can use. We also have a paid PO deposits report to use. So if we are to run the unpaid deposits report, we can see everything that is out there by vendor. We're able to see the voucher numbers that are created, the POs that they are tied to, and the amounts that we need to pay. So these are things that are currently in our open payables that we might want to know how much is just deposits, or maybe this time we just want to pay deposits. So we're trying to get a quick eyeball at what that number is going to be. This is also a report that we can use to help make sure that our GL account is in line with what we think we owe. So we have that deposits inventory GL account that we added. Whatever the balance of that account is out there, it should probably be tied to the amount that we have in our reports. So we can compare the unpaid balances to see what's open. And then we can use the paid deposits report to actually tie out the balance. We're able to see, again, all of the vendors. We're able to see the voucher numbers and the PO numbers that are associated with it. We're able to see the total amount that we paid for the deposit, and we're also able to see what has been used for the deposit. So here's our deposit used amounts. And when we get to the bottom of this PO, we're going to be able to take that, look at our number for unpaid PO deposits, and be able to tie out to that GL account. We also have the ability to move unapplied paid PO deposits or cancel them altogether. So if we have gone through our list create purchase order function and we have created a voucher for a PO deposit, and then the purchasing department lets us know, hey, never mind, we've canceled that deposit. We don't need, we've canceled the PO as a whole. We don't need that paid anymore. You can use the cancel unpaid PO deposits to remove that payable from your aging. But what if we've already paid that deposit and the purchasing department comes to us and says, hey, we're not getting this PO after all. Go ahead and move the deposit we paid to a different PO, or go ahead and ask them for the money back. We can do both of those functions by going to the move unapplied paid PO deposits function. It's going to allow us to either post a credit memo into the vendor's accounts payable file so that we can then apply that against a future order, or it will give us the option to create an invoice. So it will go into our open AR. It will be an invoice to the vendor. So we would have to have a customer account that is built for this vendor as well. And we would be able to create an invoice to send to them to ask them to go ahead and refund that deposit amount. So that is the process from start to finish, along with a few maintenance tools that are at your disposal.